I had a succulent that survived on nothing but my leftover sodas for years. When I moved in with my wife, she watered it and it died.
I saw like 5 or 6 VTubers on my Twitter timeline saying like, see guys, this is why.
I can't. Every time I see the word succulent, it just comes into my mind. Succulent Chinese meal? That's all comes to my mind.
Hello everybody and welcome to Calibus. My name is Luma, with me today is Zen.
Hello, I want that Chinese meal actually.
And today we're looking at some r/me/IRL, a subreddit dedicated to relatable imagery, like that time I got run over by a horse. Let's just get right into it. I don't know who needs to hear this, but I switched from buying coffee every day to making it at home 2 years ago, and I'm still not a millionaire.
I have studied the habits of millionaires. While it is a good step to save money by making coffee at home, have you considered supplementing your income by committing massive fraud? You know, I haven't. I might just look into that. Thank you, Brian.
This is the secret that OnlyFans models don't want to tell you. If you don't report any of your money on taxes, the IRS just will never know. It's a quick, easy loophole. This is not legal or financial advice.
If you never start paying taxes, they never know you exist.
Exactly.
My wife is in a Facebook group called Buy Nothing, where people list stuff they're giving away. The other day, a lady came to our house to pick up 2 granola bars that we didn't like. God, that lady just came for the experience. That's great. She came for the experience and left with 2 granola bars.
I like to imagine that she walked up, knocked on their door, dude comes out holding 1 in each fist. She takes them in 1 in each fist and walks away. No verbal pleasantries exchanged, nothing. Just the silence and the light crinkling of granola bag.
I see your scene. I think all it needs is grunts. That's all. That's the only form of communication.
Much like how you can grunt.
You want to take another run at that?
Every time a video is uploaded, a grunt of satisfaction and dopamine release. Subscribe, Calb video on homepage, hit bell, video.
Let us know you've watched the video to this point by grunting in the comments. We'll be liking every single grunt.
Man. Why won't sponsors talk to us? What about our CTA section is so unappealing to them? When tech meant faster computers and smaller phones, it was exciting. You wanted to know what they were going to come up with next. Now it's a bunch of jerk-offs trying to figure out new ways to charge you for a subscription to look at the crappiest ads you can imagine.
Yeah, we're basically paying to look at ads.
Did you see that Disney Plus is adding back, let me use the marketing term, continuous live streams with specific focuses that are always running Disney shows 24/7. They made cable again.
It's a cyclical cycle. It just comes back around. We try and leave TV, we go to cable, and we come onto the internet, and then the internet becomes... It all comes back, because where the money flows.
It's almost as if uncapped, unfathomable greed only leads to good things.
Yeah. Why is such a large part of early childhood education learning what sounds animals make? That's never gonna come up. It's not even important if they ever meet those animals. I've never said moo to a cow and have it go, thank you for learning about my culture. Then you went to the wrong farm.
Yeah, you went to the farm that wasn't part of a Nickelodeon show.
You just didn't learn the sounds right, so you weren't speaking their dialect, so maybe they just didn't understand you.
Yeah, you came at them like a flesh stealer, wearing a suit to try and blend in. What's a great I'm sorry gift?
Changed behavior.
If someone ain't willing to change to right their wrongs, they never felt bad about it in the first place.
Smile at strangers to make the world happier. Smile. Okay, I need you to know.
Yeah, I know. One of your emotes is this.
Yeah, I had one of my emotes just be turned into this. I love it so much.
I recently learned that my husband only opens Instagram once every 4 to 6 weeks to check out local ice cream parlor's flavor of the month. It's just an ice cream flavor checker for him. Amazing. And he's real for that.
Peak optimal usage of Instagram.
No, genuinely though, this isn't even a bit. I like when these platforms are used for small local things, and now I need to check something.
Are you looking at the burger of the week?
Burger of the month, thank you! I need to know!
You're gonna have to blur so much shit.
Oh,
in
none
this.
of this can make it in. What is the burger of the month? Post 9. I'm sorry. None of that gets to go in the video. I just got very excited realizing I can just look up the burger of the month on Facebook.
Dear employers, please stop asking for bachelor's and master's degrees if you're only offering $15 an hour. Sincerely, everyone.
Getting past that barrier in my career was probably the hardest damn thing I've ever done in my life. And now I'm sitting here like I've got so many game credits to my name that I'm never going to experience this hell again. And I really appreciate that, but at the same time, the hell didn't change, I just got out of it. Like, the hiring process is boned right now. Like, it's just not good.
No, absolutely. I'm on that process at the moment, and it is not good. It's like... oh my god, it's like abandon all hope, all ye who enter. There's no way of getting out of it unless you have the right connections.
Yeah, I got lucky. Not many people do, and it's really upsetting. Like, it bothers me to no end. I used to drink half a bottle of rum, then wake up at dawn and ace a biology test. Now I eat a salty snack too late at night and I wake up like, my hydration levels will never recover from this. You're not taking good care of yourself.
When you hit 24 years old.
Also real.
Welcome. Just wait until you hit 30.
I don't have knees.
Start shitting dust. Shout out to the old days when you said you were sleeping over at a friend's house, but you were really out in the field dying of alcohol poisoning and your parents couldn't track your phone location, much less ask you for a selfie to prove anything. Wait, oh my god, is that a thing? Do parents ask for selfies to know that their child isn't lying?
I think we grew up in the golden era of having technology, but not overbearing technology.
Oh, that's creepy.
Food bloggers, are you ready for an easy weeknight meal?
Yes!
You'll probably even have most of the ingredients on hand.
Awesome!
Okay, start by milking your goat.
Huh?
Yo, who up milking they goat right now? Let's go!
I just do it for fun.
Muscle Man Randy Savage, you to milk your goat, brother. Let's go!
My bedroom fan has been running on high non-stop for 3 years. Oh my god, yes.
This one is so real. I sometimes like to turn on my fan and then hit it with canned air just so I can feel something. That something is an immediate sinus infection.
My fan has become a close friend over the last few years because of the heat waves hitting the UK now on a yearly basis. It's not even a heat wave at this point, it's just normal weather in the summer. It's not okay.
Speaking of this movie, you guys ever think that Tarzan was a virgin before he met Jane? Or was he clapping gorilla
God.
cheeks? Well, Alex, what's the verdict?
Look, I'm just saying, we could probably talk about this at length, but I don't think this is the place to do it.
Patreon.com/campus.
When gas was $1.65, I used to drive around to clear my mind. Now, these thoughts living with me.
Unironically, though?
Yeah. Yeah, like I want to, like I had to stop going to the gym because it's like a 30-minute drive to get to my one. I'm like, every time I go, I'm spending like $8 to $10 on petrol. I can't afford this.
This is the thing that really gets me. During the pandemic, everyone started to realize what homestuck thoughts were. Because everyone was just stuck at home. And I was saying that just like, y'all cannot compare to the power of my isolated ass, because I was just used to it, because there was nothing in my hometown that I could go and do. So I would just take a walk. So then the entire street was polluted with bad vibes. Like, not being able to leave your house on a regular basis makes everything so much worse. As much as I hate everyone trying to be forced back into the office, go into the office like once or twice a week. It'll help a lot. Or go to school, you degenerates. Apparently, Pepe Silvia has a cryptid that is so ugly that he just cries about it all the time. And the way you find him is to follow his path of tears. The Squonk.
I love him.
He looks like a rejected berserk enemy.
He wasn't rejected, he just didn't show up because he didn't feel like it. I would give anything to be a golden retriever belonging to an upper middle class white family with one of those bandanas around my neck named Max or some crap. It's the life. It's the life.
We really need to break down their username of Goth Jackie Burthart from That 70s Show.
Oh, sorry, I didn't grow up watching that because, not American.
Well, that's your fault. And that's all the time we have here today on Calbus. Let us know down below which show you didn't watch because you were American. For me, it was Postman Pat.
Oh, you missed out.
I did miss out. On Postman Pat. If you want some more me IRL, there'll be another one popping up on your screen in just a couple of seconds. Patreon.com to support the channel. Merch to support the channel in a way that gets you a tangible good. My name has been Lumo. With me has been Zen. Get off our lawn.
What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we're jumping in to talk about the episodes that are going to be launching in 2024. And as Bungie have said, this is going to be their new way of delivering content between major expansions, essentially replacing the season model. And there are a handful of differences between episodes and seasons that we know about already. In this video though, we're going to talk about the roadmap and calendar for seasons this year, as we finally have details about when the first episode will start, some of the connectivity between that and the final shape itself, as well as technical details around the artifact, season pass, and leveling. Plus we get a little more detail about some of the content that we're actually going to see inside of episode drops. And so we're going to break it down in the video, guys. As always, I hope you find this one interesting, and if you do, a rating below really does help us out on the channel. But without further delay, let's get into it. And so the first thing we should mention is that Katarina from Bungie did confirm that the episode story, which is called Echoes, will begin in week 2 of the final shape. So final shape itself launches on June 4th. Once the raid and that story has been kind of concluded, on June 11th, we'll get the beginning of Echoes. And looking at the original roadmap that Bungie shared for episodes, of course the dates are incorrect because there's been a delay for the final shape, but the Echoes card lists the inclusion of a new exotic weapon and mission, and then we'll be seeing 3 different acts, each of them lasting for 6 weeks, containing new quests, story, activities, new weapons, as well as artifact mods, pass ranks, rewards, and armor. And essentially we should get an infusion of those things every 6 weeks. But given the delay for final shape, if we base the timeline on the original calendar, our best guess is that Echoes will last between June and September, and then the second episode, Revenant, will be between October and January, and Heresy will run between February and May of 2025. Now those specific dates aren't confirmed by Bungie yet, but those periods are essentially identical to the original roadmap, just moved along a few months. But in terms of heading into the first episode, Katarina from Bungie also confirmed that we'll get progression on our artifact and season pass from day 1 of the final shape launch. So while new activities, episode-specific rewards and things like that won't drop until week 2, the components around the artifact and season pass will immediately be available at the launch of final shape. And in relation to artifact bonus power, there are some changes which will affect episode content as well. And Bungie have said the way we earn bonus power from the artifact is staying the same at its core, but they're better balancing it to offer a more meaningful and rewarding progression given other upcoming changes. And with the additional time offered by each episode, we've increased the number of weeks with seasonal challenges. So at the minute we have 10 weeks of seasonal challenges, but we're going to get more when episodes drop. Plus Bungie will be buffing the XP rewards that we get from them. They do say though that we need to make some adjustments to XP requirements for artifact bonus power levels, and the goal for the rebalance is that they want actively engaged players to attain similar artifact levels achieved by the end of a season, and they want artifact power to remain a rewarding pursuit. So that's definitely worth knowing in relation to episodes. There are further details though here about how some of the rank systems and things will work. So Bungie said episodes are a big shake-up of the actual content delivery for Destiny 2, and instead of 4 seasons, 2024 will see 3 larger content-packed episodes named Echoes, Revenant, and Heresy, with the first 3 episodes being focused on the consequences and the aftermath of the final shape, and one of the narrative goals being to tell a standalone story that's easy to follow even if you haven't played the previous content, but also that episodes will deliver more frequent story beats compared to seasons, so players can expect to experience new bursts of storytelling throughout the acts. Each episode will be split into 3 acts, and each act will launch around every 6 weeks with a new story element, new quests, rewards, and more. And overall, the first act of an episode will feel packed with a big offering of new stuff to chase, and the second and third acts will expand the episodic experience with more activities, story, rewards, and new additions to rank rewards such as exotic ships. In terms of the rollout for things like ranks and rewards though, Bungie have said on top of the new story planned for each episode, each one will have a new exotic weapon and mission, but also they'll have new legendary weapons, additional artifact perks, and 200 pass ranks split across the 3 acts. acts. So we're going to get twice the amount of season pass ranks. And Bungie say the first 100 ranks and their rewards will be available during the initial act of each episode, and the second and third acts will each have 50 more ranks, with there being a similar idea for artifact perks. So the first act will have 25 available and establish a particular meta, and then the two following acts will unlock another 5 perks each to make existing builds grow even further. But they finally say the 3 episodes launching in 2024 are included in the final shape and annual pass, while the standard edition includes the active episode at the time of purchase. On top of that though, each episode will be available separately in-game via the store for 1,500 silver. And so there we go. While we don't have a much better look at the specific content for each of the episodes, that gives us a good idea about how some of the stuff will roll out. Bungie have also provided images for each of the episodes that we get in the background of the roadmap. So of course, Echoes shows a Vex enemy right here. So obviously the Vex will be the sort of key players in that, with Revenant being more focused around the Scorn, based on what we can see at least. And then finally there is Heresy, which is obviously going to be more Hive focused. And in terms of loose dev commentary about the goal for episodes, devs have said that speaking for the narrative team, we hear the audience loud and clear that the structure of story may have become predictable, even if the story quality is still high. And we're working on a number of things right now that we can't explicitly share, but that involves changing up the structure so that we can pleasantly surprise you guys more frequently in the future. And they've spoken about the repeated structure of seasons and how it gives Bungie a baseline to follow to create content more easily, but at the same time, the negative effect of that, and one of the devs said, when you create a framework for how content should be made, it makes it easier to produce that content quickly because everyone's on the same page, but it can also be predictable because everyone's on the same page. So injecting more variability into those frameworks is something that we've been talking and learning about. And they finished by saying we've identified that across multiple disciplines, the main danger of these frameworks is that they become predictable. And we talk frequently about surprises and delights, and it's something that comes up as terminology and discussions about what we're planning for surprises and delights, making sure that we've covered that player expectation. So changing the format in the way that Bungie are with episodes definitely is a response to feedback over the past couple of years. I think most players are also excited to see a different framework set up here, and hopefully that will make seasonal style content in Destiny more exciting, but only time will tell. For today though guys, that's what we have to round up, so a few extra details right there, and a general better idea as to when we can expect the content drop from episodes throughout the next year. Obviously we will get more information about them from Bungie before the first one launches, so keep it locked and loaded here on the channel, get subscribed, and turn on notifications if you want to keep up to date. Otherwise, let us know your thoughts on episodes down in the comment section. And if you have enjoyed the video, a like rating really helps us out on the channel as well. Otherwise though, cheers for tuning in, and I hope you guys have an awesome day.
What's really important about episodes is that it's a really big shakeup to what we've been doing. Instead of providing 4 seasons a year, you are going to get 3 larger episodes. And so the first 3 episodes in this coming year are called Echoes, Revenant, and Heresy. It's coming right after the final shape. And the theme for the year is going to be all about the consequences and aftermath of the final shape. I think what's really the cornerstone of the episode model that we're building is the 3-act structure. The acts act as these anchors for us to introduce new weapons, new artifact mods, new activities. There's going to be new missions coming around the core. There'll be new story moments in every single one of these acts. We're actually providing more cinematic styled experiences throughout the final shape year and the episodes with it than any of the seasons we've ever developed before.
These new stories are actually playable as standalone. Like each episode is something you can experience whether you've been playing Destiny for 10 years or this is your first one.
You're going to be able to basically enjoy them in any order you want to.
I think the opportunity with this big epic moment is that we get to innovate the game. We get to move the game forward.
It's all about change frequently. It's all about deeper story moments. It's all about more weapons, more loot, more often. And it really provides the team with a platform to go much deeper into the themes and fantasies and story of any individual episode as compared to the seasons you know of today.
Hallo AFOPs, ich bin der Anton.
Willkommen im Noppenstein-Studio von Bluebricks. Ich
Ja.
bin der Jo und das ist der Anton, wie er eben gerade gesagt hat.
Genau.
Kriegen wir hin irgendwann. Du hast uns was mitgebracht. Oh mein Gott, ich klinge schon wieder wie so ein verdammter Shopping-Kanal.
Genau, und zwar habe ich hier was mitgebracht, wo ich eine riesen Gaudi hatte.
Oh, Schem.
Nein, genau.
Anton, der eine Gaudi hatte.
Egal, also ein wunderschönes Architekturset. Genau. Genau, ich habe ein kleines Architekturset mitgebracht. Und zwar ist es nicht wirklich klein, es ist, glaube ich, Das größte? Nein, ja, also hier Burg Hohenzollern ist größer, aber die größte Kirche, die wir noch jetzt gemacht haben im
Das
Architektur.
glaube ich. Das sind
Format.
knapp oder mehr als 4000 Teile?
Knapp mehr als 4000, also 4030, 40 oder so.
Das ist, wie ihr vielleicht erkennen könnt, die Sagrada Familia in Barcelona.
Genau, die weltberühmte Kirche, die im Gegensatz zu der hier noch nicht fertig ist.
Naja, die ist auch nur insoweit fertig, dass es ein Funktionsprototyp ist.
Ja, aber ich würde mal behaupten, wir sind wahrscheinlich eher fertig. Und
Mit ziemlicher
Markt
Sicherheit.
Genau.
Wie ihr wisst, prinzipiell bauen wir Prototypen auf, um zu gucken, ob es stabil ist. Aber wenn eine Seite so gebaut wird wie die andere Seite, wenn die eine Seite stabil ist, wird auch die andere Seite stabil sein.
Genau, deswegen fehlt hier ein bisschen was, sieht man vielleicht gleich noch, aber
Sieht man gleich noch. Aber hat auch den Vorteil, da fällt uns nichts ab.
weniger ab, genau.
Weniger ab.
Genau, wie gerade schon erwähnt, ist ja die Sagrada Familia noch nicht fertig und das muss ich sagen, das war auch echt eine Herausforderung dann im Designprozess, weil ich habe halt nach Referenzbildern gesucht und natürlich gibt es Bilder von der Baustelle, also was schon gebaut ist, konnte ich nachbauen. Aber wenn es halt darum ging, wie sie mal aussehen wird, dann haben halt alle möglichen Konzeptkünstler und angeblich offizielle Quellen, sahen halt alle anders aus. Also das war echt schwierig, bis ich dann endlich mal so ein richtig offizielles Bronzemodell gefunden habe, was anscheinend in der Sagrada Familia stehen soll, wie sie dann am Ende aussieht. Da habe ich auch dieses mit diesen Mauern sozusagen, die drumherum sind, her. Weil aktuell gibt es ja, glaube ich, auch noch Probleme, dass wenn sie es in dieser Form bauen wollen, dann irgendwie noch einen Häuserblock abreißen müssen. Also ich weiß nicht, vielleicht, wenn es in ein paar Jahren fertig ist, müssen wir ein Update-Kit rausbringen, aber werden wir dann sehen. Nein, ich meine, wenn es anders aussieht, dann ist es doch vielleicht kleiner gemacht ist, aber ja, es ist so, in ihrer Optik soll sie dann so oder so ähnlich hoffentlich aussehen, wenn es fertig ist.
Wie lange bauen die da dran jetzt schon?
Also es hat ja noch Gaudí selber mit angefangen und also über 100 Jahre, glaube ich. Und ich meine, sie wollen es zu seinem 100. Todestag 2026 fertig haben. Es ist sportlich, aber es ist nicht unmöglich, sagen wir mal so. Also, ja.
Das ist tatsächlich interessant. Was ich allerdings tatsächlich gelesen habe, ist, dass die Sagrada Familia gewissermaßen die Vollendung der Gotik sein soll. Gotik besteht ja daraus, dass du möglichst hohe Spitzbögen hast, die die Kräfte nach außen ablenken. Und bei der Sagrada Familia ist, so wenn ich es richtig verstanden habe, ist das so designt worden, dass die Abstützungen Teil der Mauer sind, sodass du eigentlich keinen nach außen gerichteten brauchst, wie zum Beispiel bei Kölner Dom oder bei Veitsdom in Prag oder
allen möglichen
anderen gotischen Kirchen.
Ja. Genau, ja, es ist ja, also wenn, ist ja Neugotiker eher, ne, was ja 1900 angefangen wurde. Ich meine, da gibt es auch, also das ist eine bestimmte Stilrichtung, das katalanische irgendwas. Also man sieht ja, das ist ja keine klassische Neugotik, es ist auch noch sehr verspielt und mit schon fast so, postmodernen Formen. Also ja,
durchaus
nicht so ganz so drin, aber genau. Und halt eben auch dieses, was meint, diese gotische Richtung, dass man auch viel Innenraum hat, das wollte ich bei dem Set halt auch widerspiegeln. Weil bis jetzt die ganzen Kirchen, die wir gemacht haben, also Westminster Abbey, Münster und so weiter, die waren halt einfach reine Anschauungsmodelle von außen, während halt im Innenraum das ganze Konstruktive stattgefunden hat. Und das wollte ich jetzt hier ein bisschen anders machen. Beziehungsweise von vorne angefangen, es hat eigentlich einen anderen Hintergrund. Denn die ganzen Kirchen, die wir bis jetzt hatten, die waren auf Grundplatten, die 16 Noppen breit sind und meistens 32, Westminster Abbey ein bisschen länger, 32 Noppen die Tiefe, oder genau. Da habe ich mir aber gleich gedacht, als ich die Sagrada Familia machen wollte, dass das nicht hinhauen wird, weil wenn die so breit nur gewesen wäre, dann hätte das noch nichts ausgesehen am Ende. Dann wäre jeder Turm eine Noppe breit und nee. Aber ich wollte trotzdem sozusagen diese Kompatibilität beibehalten, dass wenn ihr jetzt schon die anderen Kirchen im Regal stehen habt und vielleicht das Regal nicht so tief ist, dass man die auch noch dazu stellen kann. Das führt dazu, das hoffe ich mal, dass es auf den ersten Versuch klappt im Video, man die Kirche nicht in zwei, aber in zwei Teile teilen kann. Und zwar so, ich hoffe, das sieht man schön. Das heißt, man kann es einmal so ins Regal stellen und den Teil woanders oder neben, sieht ja auch noch schön aus. Genau. Dabei wollte ich es eigentlich erst belassen, aber dann dachte ich, ja gut, ne, wenn man es schon so hat, kann man auch ein bisschen Innenraum reinmachen. Ne? Und der sieht dann so aus. Ich weiß nicht, das kann man schon nicht viel erkennen, man kann ein paar Detailaufnahmen machen, aber man hat hier halt schön die ganzen Sitzbänke, hier ein bisschen Freiraum und dann vorne den Altar, den man wahrscheinlich am allerwenigsten sieht. Das hat dann auch ein bisschen zu Schwierigkeiten in Bautechniken geführt. Achso, du hast den nicht gebaut, hast du gesagt. Aber
Nee, aber der Christian hat es gebaut. Und
was hat er denn so gemeckert?
Naja, das Set es sind 4000 Teile, mehr als 4000 Teile.
Ja, und wie man schon sieht, ne, hier auch an diesen Teilen, also viel 1x1, viel Bars, viel Pins, also, ne?
Du kannst dich mal kurz auf diese Seite drehen.
Ja.
Das ist das, was ich mit einem Funktionsprototypen meinte und mit, wenn eine Seite,
Genau.
die beiden Seiten sehen eigentlich gleich aus. Eigentlich sollte hier auch diese Minitür
Kann ich auch abnehmen.
Oh mein Gott.
Auch abnehmen. Das Ding ist sehr modular gestaltet, muss man sagen. Genau, ich verwechsel die beiden. Das eine ist die Passionsfassade, das ist die andere Fassade. Ja, auch die Türme, das sind die Türme der Apostel, das ist der Jesus. Also, ich habe da viel zu viel reingelesen. Genau, diese zwei Fassaden, die Seitenfassaden, sind, wie man sieht, unten schon sehr unterschiedlich, aber da muss man sie jetzt natürlich einfach. Ab hier sind die Türme eigentlich relativ gleich, zumindest in dem Maßstab, da müsst ihr es euch leider vorstellen. Genau.
Und wenn ihr hier diese Konstruktion mal seht,
da, ja, muss man also ich sag mal so, das ist nicht für Architektureinsteiger gedacht, das Set, da muss man schon ein bisschen Erfahrung haben, vielleicht schon ein, zwei von den anderen Kirchen, die ich gemacht habe. Ja, und auch vielleicht noch anderes.
ja, und vor allen Dingen, ihr seht ja hier, da ist ein Freiheitsgrad, dass man es kippen kann. Hier oben nochmal.
Da unten wird eigentlich relativ gut orientiert, aber ja, oben ist vor allem das Schwierige.
Das ist, also das Ulmer Münster ging noch, da waren das relativ lange Stangen, die man einzeln klicken konnte. Hier hat man halt mehrere, die man knicken kann. Und es ist sehr herausfordernd zu bauen. Aber es ist tatsächlich auch die erste Kirche mit Innenraum, wie der Anton gerade gesagt hat, und mit Glasfenstern.
Genau, weil hier Gotik ist, also das ist natürlich jetzt Neugotik, aber von der ursprünglichen Gotik war ja sozusagen ein Mitgedanke, dass man so lichtdurchflutete Räume haben wollte, weil in der Romanik waren es ja so alles so enge Steinbau mit kleinen Fenstern, da wollte die Gotik halt so eigentlich das komplette Gegenteil ein bisschen darstellen. So auch jetzt hier die neugotische Kirche von Gaudi. Genau, da machen wir jetzt gleich eine Detailaufnahme, denn hier sind es noch nicht alles Trans-Clear-Teile, aber die Fenster sollen dann alle, also nicht Trans-Clear, sondern in verschiedensten Trans-Farben, also halt, dass alles schön bunt wirkt am Ende.
Können wir aber eigentlich gleich live mal testen, ob das jetzt
ich weiß
schon
nicht, ob das,
funktioniert.
ja, also entweder funktioniert es jetzt oder wir machen gleich noch.
Ja, da ist die Detailkamera.
Nein, aber das Licht leuchtet ja von außen rein, dass man es dann.
Ach so, das ist Licht von außen.
Ja, wenn man es ein bisschen hin und her wackelt, dann sieht man vielleicht ein bisschen so Lichtstrahlen. Genau. Aber wie gesagt, vielleicht
Oder ihr beleuchtet es tatsächlich von innen.
Genau, da muss man, also da leuchtet es vielleicht auch ein paar so Spalten raus. Man kann nicht alles immer 1000% schließen, aber ich denke mal, es ist trotzdem dicht genug, sozusagen die Kirche, dass man auch ein bisschen Licht reinstecken kann.
Ich finde es schon beeindruckend genug, dass du bei dem ganzen Detailgrad und den Fassadenelementen, die hier drauf sind, auch mit was für Elementen du gearbeitet hast, dass du da überhaupt einen Innenraum reinkriegst.
Ja, es war nicht einfach. Also bei manchen Teilen, zum Beispiel hier, diese Rosettenfenster, da habe ich auch ewig überlegt, bis ich da echt das perfekte Teil gefunden habe. Und zwar, also da sind es noch Flat Silber, am Ende sind es natürlich auch in Tan, und zwar diese, kann ich vielleicht mal abmachen hier?
Radkappen.
Genau. Diese Radkappen hier, die dann schön hinter so einer transfarbige, also ja, ist nicht eine Farbe, halt in irgendeiner transbunten Roundplate noch dann draufsteckt, dass es halt so ein schönes Rosettenfenster ergibt.
Mhm. Da bin ich wirklich mal gespannt, wie das aussieht.
Ja, ich bin auch, also ich habe das ist einer der wenigen an den wenigen Sets, die ich auch zu Hause schon mal in meinem Homeoffice halt physisch gebaut habe, ja.
Ah.
Weil das wollte ich euch nicht antun, das ohne mal schon mal drüber geschaut zu haben, und genau, da habe ich auch schon mit den Trans-Clear-Teilen geprobt.
Ihr seht es ja. Ich bin gespannt, wer das Produktmuster aufbauen darf.
Hast du dich nicht freiwillig gemeldet?
Nee, tatsächlich noch nicht.
Du wirst aber bestimmt machen.
Wenn du das möchtest, kann ich das gerne machen. Also ich baue sowas eigentlich auch ganz gerne, aber das ist halt... Für mich persönlich sind Architekturmodelle weniger was, weil ich habe halt gerne einen Baufortschritt, den ich sehe.
Oh ja, da baut man lange dran, ohne dass man viel sieht. Also
Richtig. Da müsst ihr euch dann halt klar sein. Aber dann wiederum, wenn es dann fertig ist...
Und das sagt man ja, Architektur ist jetzt gerne mal, es hat auch echt was von meditativem Bauen. Erst recht hier mit diesen ganzen Wände, das hier, zieht sich echt hin, bis man das gebaut hat, mit diesen ganzen kleinen 1x1-Plates und so. Aber also, während man baut, ist es sehr entspannt, und am Ende, finde ich, sieht es auch
ziemlich cool aus, ja. Und wenn man dann da ist auch mehr als genügend Platz, um ein Licht reinzumachen.
Ja.
Das finde ich, das habe ich wirklich noch nie gesehen. Damit hat er mich überrascht tatsächlich. Das wusste ich nicht, bevor ich das Ding gesehen habe.
Ja. Man muss auch sagen, also hier das wurde auch schon in vergangenen Videos erwähnt, das war auch eins von diesen Modellen, das jetzt nicht beauftragt wurde, sondern wo ich das selber gemacht habe, was ich von dieser Kirche schon immer fasziniert war. Und als ich das letzte Mal hier, also nicht im Studio war, aber das letzte Mal hier bei euch vor Ort, habe ich auch ein bisschen Bilder rumgezeigt und dann kam gleich von einer Kollegin, die ist, hat sich sehr gefreut und hat, glaube ich, alle ein bisschen mit überzeugt, dass das umgesetzt wird.
Da musste sie nicht viel Überzeugungsarbeit leisten. Das ist immerhin eines der charakteristischsten Gebäude von ganz Spanien. Und es ist sehr gut getroffen. Und es wird, wir können hier mal ein Renderbild einblenden, das wird, wenn es dann fertig ist, noch viel besser aussehen, als jetzt hier mit den ganzen schwarzen Teilen und dem ganzen anderen.
Aber es ist schon relativ nah dran, muss ich sagen. Also auch,
ja, ansonsten, man könnte es fast meinen, aber selbst mit diesen 4000 Teilen kann man Noppensteine nie genug haben.
Ja, beim nächsten Mal gibt es mehr.
Wir wünschen euch viel Spaß beim Bauen.
Ciao.
Macht's gut. Das ist wirklich großartig. Weißt du eigentlich, was das einzelne Zeug alles ist, das da?
Das sind so Kapellen halt, aber so Seitenkapellen, wo halt, ich weiß nicht genau den religiösen Nutzen, ich bin jetzt nicht so da drin, aber das haben wir auch bei normalen Kirchen, dass man so Seitenkapellen hat.
Sind die verbunden oder sind die einfach nur...
Bin ich mir jetzt nicht sicher, ich glaube in diesen, also ich weiß, zum einen war ich noch nicht selber da leider, aber ich glaube auch in diesem Bronzemodell entweder nur ganz leicht oder gar nicht, also vielleicht mit so einem kleinen Gang höchstens.
Okay, das ist faszinierend. Ich bin wirklich gespannt, wie es aufgebaut aussieht.
Oh ja, ich auch.
Greetings, I'm Shad, and as you can probably tell, I love giant swords. I've already done several videos exploring kind of the mechanics of what it would be like to fight with a giant sword, the interesting limitations that would actually arise. And we came to some interesting conclusions in those videos, like the swords need to be made out of some type of super light but still really strong fantasy material. You would also need to be super strong, but interestingly, one of the things that you would also need, probably even more than super strength, is super weight to keep you grounded and not thrown off your feet when you actually use them. But if we could pretend we actually met some of those requirements, there is another question I haven't explored yet, and that is, how would you actually fight with them if you could actually use them thanks to one of these justifications? That's exactly what we're going to be exploring in this video. This thing is a beast. As you saw, much taller than your average greatsword, even historical standards. So this is a monster in terms of length and most definitely width. Interestingly though, there are some swords you can find historically that almost match this length, but they weren't meant for combat. They're called bearing swords. We believe them to be mostly ceremonial. But if you had, again, the strength to be able to use something this long, or it was made out of a magical material, okay, any one of those justified reasons, that's a question. How would you actually fight with it? Now, to match a lot of the fantasy stuff that we see in video games and other things, we've made it match the width of a lot of the fantasy ones, even though width isn't as necessary. I have a whole video where how would you want to make a two-handed sword, a giant sword, even having something this wide, so not as wide as this, but as wide as my fingers are showing here, right? It would still easily be heavy enough, depending on the width, okay? And it would have to have some measure of width in it, otherwise it would just bend and break. Again, super material, you get away with it. But even if it was just, say, yay wide, it would still be crazy heavy to get all the power you need in it. And having extra width wouldn't really be a necessity. And then you might assume, well, what if you want to block with it? It's not wide enough to block the range of a shield, but I have got another video experimenting on combining a shield and a giant sword, and I call it the Schword. It's a joke name. I think there's other names you could come up with that would be better with it. That is a giant sword that's wide enough to be used as a shield. We're not going there. We're actually looking at the more stereotypical fantasy giant swords, which usually have about this width to them. How would you fight with it? Now, just like with the one-handed sword, it's interesting to even compare or pretend and say this fantasy giant sword, if it's just as heavy as this wooden one is to me, already we got some interesting things. This is a heavy sword. This is heavier than a lot of two-handed swords. And not only is it because of the mass and overall weight, more because of the torque. Because it's so much longer, the stress I feel on my hands is pretty high. But okay, now we can pretend I either have the strength to lift something metal and it weighs as heavy as this, and then my weight is grounding me enough so I don't tip me over. So we can pretend I have that, or it's the super light material that's also really strong that makes it the same approximate weight as this wooden one is here. And so I can lift it and manipulate it as easy as I can this one. How would you fight with it? Crowd control. big wide swings like this, just slash, 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 slash. And you can absolutely do this, like I'm doing it right now, and if the sword did weigh as much as this one here, you can do it, and that would be intimidating. But I'm already running into something interesting, and that is what it would be the rest position. My rest position, look, I'm resting it right here. It's not a real combat one, but because of the torque and how heavy it is on the top end, yeah, resting on the ground and then on your arm like that, it's just what I'm doing now. But in terms of standing guard rest positions, this is already really tiring. I would not want to hold this long at all. This would be terrible, honestly. By having it back in a wrath position, resting on the shoulder, this is ready to go, and already got the wind up for a big slash, okay? Before I go to the type stacks, let's explore other stances. So I did mention kind of a wrath or on the shoulder stance like this, and if it's a sharp blade, you want some type of padding or something so it doesn't cut you, of course. That would work decently enough. Holding it honestly right up vertical is pretty darn good, and you can keep it elevated. You don't need to keep it elevated too much, but there, what's interesting, because the blade is so wide, you even rest it on the shoulder like that, and that's actually quite comfortable. And I don't need to hold all the weight on my arms anymore, and this is pretty good. Actually, right there isn't bad at all. We see in video games supergiant swords a lot, and oftentimes the way that they're fought with is really bad. Like if we look at, I love Elden Ring, we look at the animation specifically, they're swinging it about wildly, over-swinging in a really crude, uncontrolled fashion. And I think there's ways that you would fight with it much more realistically that could still convey the weight, speed, and strength behind the strikes that look far more controlled and precise, like you've actually trained with it. It's good to combat. This is actually a really good position. Why is this good? Okay, sword is elevated, and so it is ready to attack right here. How? Well, one big way is just bang, just drop it. Now, if you really wanted to go hard, you go like that. You could throw your shoulder into it, kind of like what they do in Monster Hunter. They have that giant sword where it does this big swing and the body is flying up as it hits and stuff. You could get away with that. Another way to recover, see what I did then? So when I was down, right, lifting it, leveraging it on my arm, and then pulling up like that, is the way, like, much easier. It makes make it resting kind of, not center of balance, but you know what I'm doing. It's a leverage point. Adds more leverage, lift it up. I can't lift it up one hand. I literally cannot lift it up one-handed like that. But if I do this, suddenly I can much easier. So from this position, you can also push it into a sideways slash, like so. Recover up. So I think this is actually one of the best. And what's interesting about that sideways slash, I was able to use my shoulder as a bit of leverage to kind of push it off into that slash that way. And so that works pretty well. Another stance, let's think about this, right? Another one might actually be something, I don't know, if you had a glove that you could hold it, something like this might actually work, because again, glove to prevent yourself from cutting your own hand. You can rest a sword like that. You would never need to with a real sword because they're so light, but this is so heavy, right? Again, if you had the strength, you could avoid the cut with a metal glove or something like this. This is actually not bad because it gives you that extra leverage point to push off into a quick attack. Where you're there, you just push off into a slash right there. Or you could go around, get it into a wide one, and then you recover and you're good to go. It's interesting how much I'm leveraging with my shoulder to recover. I think you would probably want to do that in combat, especially if you need to be quick. Like if it hit ground, you had an enemy there, it'd be much easier to just push it there, bang it off. Wow, that's really interesting. So even in combat, where I got it here and I leverage off my shoulder to push it into a cut, land there, then I can leverage it up, I can push it down. Wow, you incorporating the shoulder as a rest and leverage point to launch off of is really effective. I really think you could build a whole combat system around this kind of shoulder rest slash leverage, not only position, but movement style, where you're there and you can push it off sideways and then you can leverage it up over that shoulder, hit, and then again, you get there, leverage over there, hit, push it there, and then we leverage it up, you can spin it around, get back on that, leverage it over that shoulder. And this is just really interesting where, you know, you have this whole movement system where you get there and then you can push it off and just go bang, then back in position like that. That's a really intriguing style that has a lot of practical benefit because it's so long and heavy, just that extra leverage. I love it. One of the things you might have noticed is that with a lot of the experimentation I'm doing, I'm focusing a lot on slashes, and that's one of the main focuses I think you would generally end up doing, because your area of attack, your threat range, is huge with this thing because it's so long, and you can do these big wide slashes just like we see with Montante treatises. What we can't really do with Montante are like underarm slashes because it hits the ground. You could do sideways slashes where you bring it sideways and hit up, and you could try and go sideways and hit it, but you can't let it hit the ground. Now when it comes to spinning, there are certain spins I think you could get away with a sword this large. Oftentimes you won't need to, because doing like a full area attack like this, spinning and offending your back like that, right, is probably quicker than trying to do a whole like, you know, the thing they see in video games. Video games. Oh, I just damaged my castle.
Thanks for visiting the Shadlands, the place to find quick and easy to watch sword-related content. This video was a supercut or clip from a larger Shadiversity video. If you'd like to see the full...
And it didn't help that fireplaces weren't invented until later in the Middle Ages.
What?
Shadiversity.
Before we begin, do you know I have a brand new YouTube channel called The Shadlands? But what is The Shadlands, I hear you asking? Well, if you love the Shadiversity content, you will love the Shadlands content because it's basically the same, except it is made to cut to the chase and straight to the point. With recuts of older videos that you've probably never seen before, made to be shorter and easier to consume, as well as brand new exclusive content that you will not find on the Shadiversity YouTube channel. All made in the focus of this new channel, easier to consume content, because even though I love the detail and deep dives that we do here on Shadiversity, some people just don't have the time to watch such long videos. So check out the Shadlands to catch classic Shadiversity content made easier to consume, as well as brand new exclusive content where we cut to the chase and get straight to the point.
Greetings, I'm Shad, and a viewer of mine brought to my attention what might be one of the worst misinformed castle-related videos I have ever seen. Before we begin, I do want to add the caveat that I do not think people who make videos like this should be stopped or shamed or anything like that. There's a lot of misinformation that people can actually fall into by accident. There's a lot out there. They think they're doing good by sharing facts about, you know, history, medieval life, castles and stuff. And they can be misled, unfortunately, to no, you know, fault of their own. That can happen. And also, the existence of videos like this gives opportunity for you to find my content and other people's content who are in a position to correct it. And so I actually think it can serve a even better benefit for people wanting to learn about this stuff, because by learning the incorrect thing, that often can lead people to learn the correct thing where they might not have ever learned the correct thing if they hadn't first been misinformed to begin with, okay? Oftentimes the path to truth is traveling through untruth and being misled. So let us begin.
What was life like in a medieval castle?
I just have to comment, this is seems like an AI-generated voice. This is a common voice that you hear in a lot of videos. And you know, people are sometimes saying that there's all this type of AI content that's flooding the platform is really bad. You know, I'm a proponent of AI art, and I think creators can use AI, you know, tools to enhance their own work and stuff. And to me, this is neither positive or negative that it's made by AI. I've seen pretty bad videos that were made, voiced by humans and things. I wonder if it was written by AI, because could that be the source of where all this misinformation is coming from? Because if the AI was trained off of what's mostly available online, and then you ask an AI about facts of medieval castles, most likely you'll get a lot of things wrong. And that's one of the things that people have found with a lot of large language models. I wasn't intending this video to be an AI video, by the way. This is just a really bad castle video, even though I am very passionate about AI art. Okay, one of the things I've found with AI large language models is that they can actually be misinformed about the information they provide. And so an AI large language model is not actually a good source to get correct information about specific things sometimes. It can be really good with code and other stuff, but it can only be good as the information it's trained off of. And if it was trained off of a lot of the just offhand comments people make about castles, this might be the sludge that it spits out as a result.
On average, around about 100 people would stay in a castle.
Like, where the heck did it get that information from? Like, what? No, that wasn't the case. On average, 100 people. Most medieval castles were small. I have a recent video on Shadiversity talking about a lot of misconceptions of medieval castles. By the way, this is adding more misconceptions to that list. But one of the misconceptions is that all castles were big. And I got to show a great castle at Tower, Court and Castle in Britain. And one of the great things is more representative of what most castles are like. Single grand tower, centralized keep, maybe 5 stories on all. So that castle, if you were to include the external kind of buildings that, hugged the bailey, maybe 20 people, most, okay? The castle mostly served a single household. Granted, you could have like entire families sometimes living in single rooms. That was more common for the medieval period. So you could push it for a small castle to reach maybe up to 50. But that's a lot of people fitting into what the more standard size of castles were in the medieval period. Most castles were actually on the small end. And as a result, fitting 100 people in, not a chance. So the fact that this video is saying, oh yeah, the average population of a castle, 100 people, maybe for the largest of castles, and even then, 100 people, including servants and everything like that, yeah, you could probably fit, 100 people in at Carnarvon, carefully. But those are the exceptional larger castles. And so it's more nuanced factual information like this that you don't find online, and I think an AI even trained off of this stuff would get really wrong. And so 100 people, that is just wild that I would say that.
At a time. This mainly consisted of servants who were required to maintain day-to-day operation.
The most of the population of a castle was servants. Not necessarily. This is why it's really bad speaking in such broad terms, where it's always this. There might be cases where there were more servants than other people, but the castle population would be comprised out of the family living there. And then the next, I would say the next like larger population outside of the family, and probably the family was probably even less than this group of people, would be the soldiers, the man-at-arms. The castle is a military building, all right? And so you'd have a barracks and soldiers manning the walls, and that would usually comprise probably the largest group of people, and the servants would be even less than that. And the servants, depending on how large the family is, because the family is not usually just a single family. If it's a small castle, yeah, predominantly a single family, but there would be relatives that might have their spouses and children, and if you had room, you could fit them in. It'd be harder to fit it in smaller castles. This is why you have certain noble families, right, move outside of their castles into a manor house or a fortified manor house because the castle wasn't big enough. It's exactly what we saw at Tower, Castle and Court. And so when you had additional family members, that would be the option. But even then, when you have like just direct family relatives living in a castle, you could probably, we're only reaching about maybe 10 to 20 family members, and they could be served by, if it's a family of 10, they could easily be served by 5 servants. To equal amount to equal people there, not necessarily. You don't need a servant for every single person. Depends how wealthy the family is, of course. And I'm not saying that it will always be a lower group of servants. I'm saying it depends. Obviously, would have been cases where there was a very high number of servants to the family living there, but usually you'd have more man-at-arms and soldiers. But to say it was always mostly comprised of just the servants in the castle, and that's how they reached the average of 100 people living in the castle, no, that's flat out incorrect.
The castle itself would smell horrible.
Oh, wow, that... I hate comments like this. Like, I would ask a question. Did medieval people have noses? Did they? Of course they did! What do noses? They smell, and there are certain odors that people find offensive. So the whole thing is that medieval people never bathed and they were okay with horrid smells and like a castle would smell horrible. It's nonsense, all right? No, there were times where they would actually have certain herbs and scents in to either mask bad smells or just to give a good smell. You know one of the things that they had? They had rose water oftentimes, not all the times, but when washing their hands, they would often make it to be rose water because it would smell nice. Why? They had noses and they liked nice smelling things, which meant they would also be offended by bad smelling things. Shock, horror, all right? And also, there is a lot of like medieval art showing people bathing, all right? The whole non-bathing thing oftentimes come from more exceptional, more narrow circumstances, like if a city was dealing with the plague and people were getting quarantined, there were some beliefs that bathing would spread disease because it either opened up the pores or something like that and you could catch disease easier. And so people would bathe less in those situations. And so what happens is people find more exceptional, smaller circumstances of a certain practice happening, like, oh, people bathe less. And they apply it universally across an entire historical period that covers 500 years. Not only that, a huge geographical area. Everyone in medieval Europe, right, very large area, suddenly is not bathing and they didn't mind horrible smells. It's nonsense. Like, basic common sense can actually debunk most of this. It's like, and so I would pose the question, right? Do people like living in horribly smelling things? No, of course they don't. And so why would people accept castles that just smelt horrible all the time? It is just bonkers. It's silly. It's a silly assertion. Now, not to say there wouldn't be areas in the castle that might have more offensive smells, like the cesspit, but even the toilets, the garderobes is what they were called, right? Oftentimes would fall right into the moat, okay? That's the whole purpose of a toilet, is to have a place where you could throw away the waste of the human body outside of the castle, because they didn't want the smell in the castle. Do you think they never cleaned them? Humans are humans. They don't like bad smells. We find the smell of feces and excrement offensive. So the fact that they would just be, oh yeah, we'll piss in a corner, right? And just throw some straw over it to soak it up. And then they just sat in disgust and horrible scents and smells is bull dust, nonsense. And so stuff like this, it continually gets propagated. This is not an old video, it's a more recent one.
This is because flushable toilets weren't invented.
Because flushable toilets weren't invented, castles would smell horrible, right? And they're showing one type of possible garderobe that would fall into the cesspit, right? If the cesspit was closed off, just like, have a bit of a wood that sits over the hole, the smell doesn't get out, okay? And even if there was a small scent, it would only be localized, right? And of course, cesspits were cleaned out. And a lot of castles had garderobes that just fell right onto the outside of the moat of the castle, so the smell wouldn't stick around. And then also, you could just clean out the cesspits, all right? But to assume that because it wasn't flushable and it fell into like either a hole or something outside, that would stink out the entire castle, again, nonsense.
At the time, meaning waste would collect at a giant cesspit at the bottom of the building.
Or just outside. But would that stink out again, the purpose of a garderobe toilet is to get the waste out of the castle so the smell wouldn't be in it.
On top of that, most people were unable to afford a bath.
Most people were unable to afford a bath. This is an interesting one. I thought they were going to go in the direction of most people didn't bathe. He takes an additional step. They just couldn't afford a bath. Afford a bath. Okay. We're not talking about like some copper cast metal, like even the image they're showing you. What are they having a bath in? Like a barrel. Like medieval baths were basically, like a lot of them, made out of wood. And guess what? Peasants, they could get their hands on barrels. They were a common utility item throughout the entire medieval period, right? And not only that, okay? You don't even necessarily need a barrel, so I'll just call them baths, because the baths of medieval period are basically like these barrel things. You didn't even need a bath like that to bathe in. They had rivers, right? They had bodies of water. Funnily enough, we also have medieval art of people bathing in bodies of water, as well as, of course, baths. And they also had bath houses. But the idea that most medieval people just couldn't even afford it, this is silly nonsense. It's like, most medieval peasants, not only could they afford, they could probably make their own. If not, just have a jug, pour it over themselves, clean themselves off with water. I think this was a foreign thing to people of the past. They think people of the past were just so much more stupid than us. In actual fact, they were probably even smarter. They had more, not only likely, it is guaranteed, they had vastly more practical skills to provide for themselves, making food, making shelter, cleaning themselves, stuff like that, than probably we do in the modern day. we rely on so many conveniences that make us less independent in the modern day than what they had in the past.
In summer, the smell in a castle would become almost unbearable.
What a nonsense thing. Again, it's going off the thing, oh, they barely bathe, or they couldn't have the money to bathe. By the way, people in a castle, that would indicate them being rather wealthy, yet they're saying most medieval people didn't have the money to afford a bath. Yet they're saying that also answered why some of the smells are bad in a castle that was occupied by people with a lot of money, according to their own standard, who would then have money to either build or buy a bath, which you don't need a lot of money to do anyway. But even their own logic is defeated. This is how silly this video is. Truly an almighty piece of junk, this video. And then in the summer, it would be almost unbearable. If it was almost unbearable, like really, just can they think about this stuff? If it was almost unbearable, do you think they would do nothing about it? They would just laugh. It's almost unbearable that I want to nearly move out of this castle, this big, elaborate, fancy, rich home that I have in, but I'm so incompetent and stupid that I won't do anything about the smell. I'll just have to live with it. It's like...
The castle would also be very dark and extremely cold.
Gosh, there's a common one that comes up. It's like... No, I mean, there are rooms that would be very dark that didn't have windows, but castles had windows. I think they might mention that all the windows were arrow slits. That's false. A lot of castles, I got to see a lot of them in person, right, where they could get provision for a larger window in an area that wouldn't be a defensive vulnerability. They would have large windows. If the window could be facing the inside of the bailey, man, I mean, at Caerphilly, they got these two big, beautiful windows on the forward-facing gatehouse, right? But also on Carnarvon Castle, that has big windows higher up, so no one can just easily reach and climb through. But those windows were kind of on the outside of the castle, yet it was also facing the city that was attached to it. So Carnarvon is actually a citadel. Citadel means a castle that's attached to a city, and it has a wall around a township next to it, or city, and some of those windows that are on the higher up levels from Carnarvon is facing the township, which still has a defensive wall, so it's technically facing the inside of the bailey as well. But if you were just to class it at the castle by itself without the external city wall, because if those city walls were breached, you know, that these are the walls that will be facing on Carnarvon Castle, those windows are facing the outside of the castle in that technical sense, but they're so high up, they're very hard to reach. And so, of course, castles did have windows to let in light. It's not to say there wouldn't be less light in the rooms that only had arrow slits. Yes, it would be less, but then they'd use candles. That's what happens when it's dark. Candles, fireplaces. We'll get to the fireplaces because that addresses the cold thing. But addressing the light thing, it's like, what do you think people are going to do if there's not enough light? They'll just live in the dark? Castles are always dark. No, then they would have candles, okay? To provide light, sconces and all those things. And that's only when there was not enough provision from the outside light from windows. And there are many castles with many windows providing light. So this whole thing, they're always dark, nonsense. Now there's the cold thing. This cold thing comes up a lot. Stone has is it called thermal mass? A pretty high thermal mass, which means it's not a good insulator, but it can store a lot of heat once heated up. And so it would get a while to get going, but basically, once you heated up the internal castle, it could retain that heat for a bit longer, all right? How did they do it? Fireplaces. One of the very common things, we think of homes today, and a lot of homes that have fireplace, only one fireplace, because it's a good insulation, and that fireplace can sometimes provide heat for most of the house. Not so with castles. So what they did? More fireplaces. Individual rooms with individual fireplaces to heat that individual room. And I got to see in person so many rooms, tower rooms, side rooms, everything, fireplaces all around. In the non-habitable rooms that were just there for storage or something like that, no fireplaces. But so many more fireplaces than you might expect, because in any room that they wanted any level of habitation, yeah, they would want to be warm. And the winters could get pretty cold sometimes, especially in Britain. So how'd they fix that? Fireplaces. Again, they're saying castles are always cold. It's like, really, if people are just living and they're freezing, do they think they'll just freeze to death, or would they do something to solve the issue? This whole video seems to be like there are all these problems that medieval people were so dumb that they just lived in this horrible state and did nothing about it. Nonsense. If there were issues, they would do things to fix it. And yeah, because stone isn't a great insulator, add fireplaces, problem solved. That's right, pretty warm and cozy in a lot of instances.
Early castles had small windows for defensive purposes, but this just made it dark.
You would be surprised how much light those small windows actually let in.
Can we actually optimize sleep so much to the point where you could get the same level of recovery in 6 hours?
I was there. Sometimes, like, your eyes adjust, right? And so in a more dark environment, your eyes actually adjust to be more sensitive to light, and even those small windows can actually light up, functionally enough, well enough, entire rooms, all right? Of course, larger windows, even better. But to say all castles had these small windows, and there's actually a lot of castles which had much bigger windows, so let in more light. And even then, these type of windows let in more light than especially what they're showing in this short.
And hard to see in, and it didn't help that fireplaces weren't invented until later in the Middle Ages.
What? Hang on. Fireplaces were not invented until the late Middle Ages. What the heck? Now, I think they're going to be going off the fact that in some instances, there was a centralized fireplace that would, just let the smoke seep out of other openings and holes. And that's more represented like Viking longhouses and thatched cottages in some instances. But to think that fireplaces were not invented, oh my gosh. Of course fireplaces were invented. They were invented all the way back in Roman times and before. Many people just didn't know what a fireplace was. Some of the oldest castles that I saw have built-in fireplaces. This one's wild. I have no idea where they're getting that. That fireplaces were not invented until the late medieval. That one is wild.
So people would use open fires, which didn't spread heat very well.
So because there were open fires in the early Middle Ages, and also just other places as well, they'd take the assumption that, that's because fireplaces weren't invented. No, sometimes there's actually utility in having a centralized fireplace. And they say it didn't spread heat very well. The reason why you'd have a centralized fireplace is to spread heat more uniformly in an environment. It spreads heat better. Literally the opposite of what they're saying here. And then, so what we can see, like centralized fireplace, like I said, Viking longhouses as well as like round, thatched houses and stuff like that. The smoke actually can seep through the thatch pretty easily, and so it doesn't necessarily need a dedicated chimney to funnel the fire out.
And would cause a room to fill up with smoke.
If the smoke was so bad that people could barely breathe and fill up, right? The whole kind of tone and message of this video is that medieval people are dumb. There were really bad things that happened, and they were so stupid they did nothing about it and they just had to live with it, and wasn't it horrible to live in a medieval castle at the time? No, if it was so bad that the smoke was filling up, they would do something about it. People aren't dumb. And of course, they figured out things to solve issues like this.
Disease was common in the place because the servants couldn't afford medicine.
The medicine of the medieval period was just poor. I have a video actually on that. Criminally underviewed in my opinion, as I can link it, but talking about medieval medicine, and it is wild, some of the things they believed. Yet at the same time, there are some things that worked really well, like their herbology was actually pretty good. And there were some medicinal practices that were functionally valid and did work. Some were completely off, like the whole theory of the 4 humours. They believe that the body had 4 different types of conditions or liquids in them. And there was like phlegm, yellow bile, black bile, and I forget the 4th one. Blood, sorry. Yeah, there we go. Phlegm, yellow bile, black bile, and blood, I think were the 4 humours. And they felt they had to be in balance, and they came up with these wacky theories. Yet what's funny, even though they're wacky, there is a logical through line that they used in that. And so they were trying to apply logic in their understanding of the human body. They were just getting a lot of things wrong. But saying they got everything wrong, nonsense. And to say a lot of these medicinal treatments, especially the herbology, just couldn't be afforded by the common person, nonsense. A lot of these are natural herbs that everybody had access to, okay? not a problem. Then there were the wacky ones that probably did require, you know, a bit more money or a specialist, even though you'd be better served by not hiring some of those physicians that had the more wacky techniques and everything like that. And as a result, the rich people that were hiring these physicians probably would get worse, where the poor people that were just self-medicating or going off common herbology knowledge and stuff like that were probably medicating themselves better and other things. But disease, look, this is variable because I think they're taking the things like the Black Death and then applying it too broadly. That disease was always, you know, a problem in the medieval period. No. There were times when disease wasn't rampant, okay? But then the times that there were, and they're latching onto those, applying it too broadly.
So they would have to rely on home remedies or pray to God the illness would go away.
Pray to God the illness would go away. By the way, medieval nobility would pray for illnesses to go away. This wasn't just restricted to the poor. And relying on home remedies, like I said, sometimes those home remedies are probably better than the physician techniques and other things. But also, like, the physicians would also use the home remedies, especially the ones that they observed working. And the short cuts off then. So not only does this seem like an AI-made short, actually, it also seems like a really cheap, lazy one where they're cutting it out of a larger video, just cutting things off. I don't know where the origin video is to this short now. I might have to look up the YouTube channel this comes from. So this short comes from One Kia History. Seems like a very stock standard one that they make. And this was one of their shorts, and it looks like a mostly short channel. So it doesn't seem like this one comes from a larger history video, because what I thought it might have been one of their larger videos that they cut down into a short, because it cuts off abruptly and it ends with, you know, you just have to pray to be healed. And so I don't know if it comes from a larger one, but that short was hyper-condensed nonsense. Complete, useless. I think everything they said was wrong in it, all right? There you go. And it looks like there's some life in a medieval city. Why do castles have narrow staircases? I have a feeling they're perpetuating one that I've addressed in my recent castle video about common misconceptions about castles all spiral clockwise. And they're saying narrow is probably, they're spouting the misinformation that it was for a defensive feature, which is false. Check out the previous video there. But all right, I'll leave this one here because, oh, that short had such condensed nonsense in it. It was amazing. And some I had never heard before. That just 5 places weren't invented in the early medieval period. So people just allowed themselves to get smoked out because they were idiots. Amazing, right? But there you go. There is still a lot of misinformation about castles, and not to worry, I'm doing my best to try and correct it, share some good information, and you can check out the previous castle video. Not only that one a lot of people have seen. Why don't you check out the one where I explore Koch Castle's inside? Koch, I get, but I explore the inside of the castle, and they're criminally underviewed because that one has some amazing stuff. You can learn a lot about the inside of a castle as I explore the inside of Castle Koch. Check it out. Hope to see you there. Until then, farewell.
Was macht euch